Let's talk about a little bit more advanced or really intermediate bash. Backticks, running processes in the background, as well as the commands xargs, t, and time. So when you talk about backticks, what does that mean? What are backticks? The font here isn't that great, but essentially, here's what backticks look like. You've got a command here. Let's say it's hostname. What you can do is you can do echo backticks hostname, and what this will do is it will take the output of hostname itself and put it on the command line for you to echo. And what you can then do is you can then pipe that to something else that, say substitutes IP for foo globally, and you get something like this, right? Now, of course, in this case, you could have just done this and would have given you the same thing. But where backticks gets more interesting is if you want to do something like this. The name is, and now you can substitute the value of one command in another. Going through this over here, you can put this in the background. You can look at these instructions. Basically, you start a long-running process, and this gives a fairly good understanding of what's going on. We saw this earlier as well with sleep. But basically, you start this process. You can do other things by putting an ampersand there. It runs in the background. You can use the computer for other things, and then it'll tell you when it's completed. And process ID 5472 over here is the name of that process. Finally, you should take a look at xargs, mess around with this command, and you'll kind of get a sense of what xargs does. And you can read this description here as to what exactly xargs gives you over just wildcards. The short answer is that xargs is very useful for anything which is involving very large numbers of files. You won't have to do too much of that in this class, but if you do any data analysis, you should be aware of xargs. Then finally, if we take a look at t and time, these are really mentioned for completeness at least. T I don't really use very much myself, but I mention it. As for time, this is useful for benchmarking commands. If you do time sleep 5, it'll echo the fact that time took 5 seconds to complete. There's also a GNU time command, which actually is much more powerful, but that is a little bit beyond our scope for right now. So that completes kind of our intermediate bash commands.